200 figures stood in a circle on the black volcanic rock at the foot of Mount Hermon. They were not men. Their forms shimmered with a light that made the surrounding stars seem dim. And in the center, one figure lifted a circlet of light, not a crown of gold, but a fragment of a star, cold and terrible. He placed it on his head, and 200 voices spoke as one, their oath echoing through the canyons and into the valleys below, an oath that would poison the very bloodline of humanity. Today, you will discover that this forbidden moment of rebellion, led by the being named Semyaza, is not confined to an obscure scroll. Its secret mechanism, the very key to how an angelic curse spread to every human soul, is hidden in plain sight within your New Testament, a connection your church or seminary has never shown you. The proof begins in a manuscript condemned by later councils but quoted by Christ's own apostles, the Book of the Watchers, found within 1 Enoch, chapters 6 through 16. We open our investigation with a familiar yet profoundly cryptic passage in Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took any they chose. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. The text then states these were the mighty men of old, men of renown. Official interpretations stumble here. Who are the sons of God? Some rabbinic traditions and later church fathers argued they were righteous descendants of Seth, pointed to something more disturbing. But the Genesis account provides no names, no motive, and no clear consequence beyond the vague statement that humanity's wickedness had grown great. It's a narrative cliffhanger without a resolution in the text itself. This is our central contradiction. A cataclysmic event is introduced, involving supernatural beings called sons of God, with monumental offspring, and yet the Bible's own narrative immediately pivots to Noah and the flood without explaining how these two events are connected. The silence is deafening. It begs the question, what exactly did these beings do and who was their leader? To solve this, we must step outside the canonical boundary for a moment, into the text that the early church and the Dead Sea Scrolls community treated as the definitive commentary on this passage. The first book of Enoch. The book of Enoch, specifically the section called the Book of the Watchers, doesn't just comment on Genesis 6, it expands it with terrifying specificity. In Enoch chapter 6, we are given names. And the first name listed is not Azazel, the figure often associated with teaching forbidden arts, but Semyaza. The text states, Semyaza being their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall become responsible for this great sin. The other watchers then respond by making a collective oath, binding themselves to the act. This is our first microdetail of immense importance. Semyaza's primary role is not as a teacher of secrets, but as the instigator and the psychological catalyst for a collective, binding transgression. He overcomes their hesitation. The text then lists 19 other leaders, culminating with Azazel, bringing the total of named chieftains to 20. Enoch chapter 7 reveals their number, 200. This is not a random detail. In Jewish mystical tradition, 200 is a number associated with a full, complete, and devastating manifestation of divine judgment. Now, a natural objection arises immediately. Why should we trust a non-canonical book? This is a critical question, and we must answer it head-on. The credibility of Enoch for this investigation does not rest on its canonicity, but on its historical context as the primary lens through which the writers of the New Testament and the Qumran community understood the Genesis 6 event. The Dead Sea Scrolls yielded more copies of Enoch than almost any other text except the Psalms and Isaiah, proving its centrality to Second Temple Jewish thought. The New Testament book of Jude, verse 14, explicitly quotes from the book of Enoch, attributing the prophecy to Enoch, the seventh from Adam. The early church father Tertullian defended its authority. Therefore, we are not using a fringe text, but the very document that formed the intellectual and theological backdrop for the apostles themselves when they thought about the fallen angels. This is our anchor source. So we have a leader, Semyaza, and a collective act. But the text reveals another shocking detail often missed in translations. The offspring, the Nephilim, are described in the original Aramaic of the Dead Sea Scrolls fragments of Enoch, not merely as giants, but as beings who devoured all the labor of men. And when they died, their spirits emerged. This is pivotal. The sin of the Watchers wasn't just a one-time violation. It created a self-perpetuating spiritual contagion. Most discussions of the Nephilim focus on Genesis 6-4, but look at the verse again with the Enochian framework in mind. It says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward." This phrase, "and also afterward," is the key the text gives us. It is a direct, in-Bible admission that the Nephilim phenomenon survived the flood. The Enochian tradition provides the missing logic. While the physical bodies of the Nephilim were destroyed, their disembodied spirits, the evil spirits that came forth from them, according to Enoch 15:11, continued. This is not a Gnostic invention. It is a direct parallel to the biblical concept of unclean spirits and demons that permeates the Gospels. The collective oath of the 200 led by Semyaza set in motion a cycle of spiritual pollution that transcended the physical cleansing of the flood. Now, consider the profound theological consequence of this. If true, it means the corruption introduced was not merely genetic or moral, but ontologic, affecting the very spiritual ecosystem of the world. Created a legacy of disembodied wickedness that would require a solution beyond a flood. This points directly to the need for a greater, final redemption. But the detail that will completely reframe everything we just uncovered, the New Testament connection that no commentator I've found has ever placed side by side with the oath of the 200. That is exactly where we go next. If you're seeing the terrifying pattern here, the way a single act of angelic conspiracy rippled through history, make sure you're subscribed. Because what we uncover next proves this isn't ancient history, but a template for a conflict that is still active today. Now turn to the New Testament, to the writings of the Apostle Peter. In his second epistle, chapter 2, verses 4 and 5, Peter makes a stunning connection. He writes, "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly." The Greek word translated hell here is Tartarus, a term used only this once in the entire New Testament. It is not the typical word for Hades or Gehenna. Tartarus, in Greek mythology and in the Enochian literature it influenced, was a prison specifically for the rebellious Titans, a direct parallel to the imprisoned Watchers. Peter is directly referencing the Enochian narrative. But look at the sequence. Angels sinned, then the ancient world was judged. The two events are linked causally in Peter's mind, just as they are in Enoch. But left their proper dwelling, he is kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Both apostles confirmed the Enochian account of a specific group of angels already bound, awaiting judgment. This is our second reframing twist. The New Testament validates not just the story, but its ongoing, unresolved status. These beings are in chains, yet their legacy, the evil spirits, are not. Which leads to the second major objection. If Semyaza and his host are bound, why does this matter to my faith today? Because their method of corruption, the collective oath, the binding pact, did not die with them. The Book of Enoch details that the Watchers taught humanity's sorceries, incantations, and the cutting of roots, which are, at their core, technologies for contacting and bargaining with spiritual forces. This pattern of pact-making is the very essence of idolatry and occult practice condemned throughout Scripture. The rebellion of Semyaza established a blueprint for how spiritual authority is illegitimately seized and distributed in opposition to God. When we see this, a chilling parallel emerges in Revelation chapter 12, describing the tale of the great dragon sweeping down a third of the stars of heaven, a classic image of angelic rebellion. The pattern of a leader catalyzing a group into a binding, catastrophic revolt repeats. Semyaza's story is the prototype. So, what is the resolution? We began with a silent gap in Genesis, filled by the detailed testimony of Enoch, and confirmed by the apostles Peter and Jude. The leader, Semyaza, is more than a name on a list. He represents the principle of collective, willful transgression that creates a generational curse. His oath on Mount Hermon was not just a promise to marry human women. It was a cosmic declaration of war against the created order, a war that shifted from the physical realm to the spiritual, from the Nephilim to the demons that plagued Christ's ministry. The productive anticlimax is this: the story doesn't end with the Watchers in Tartarus. It sets the stage for the entire biblical narrative of redemption. To undo what was done in the flesh by the sons of God, to reclaim the corrupted human lineage, not with a flood, but with his own blood. To bind the strong man, not just the original leaders, but the entire spiritual hierarchy that followed their pattern. This leads us to the viral final question, the one that echoes our initial contradiction. If the sin of the Watchers introduced a permanent spiritual corruption into the world that even the flood could not wash away, and if the New Testament apostles believed those specific angels were already in chains, then what are the identities and the strategies of the rebellious spiritual forces that are still, according to Paul in Ephesians 6:12, actively at war with us today? The story of Semyaza is not a myth. It is the first chapter in the Manual of Spiritual Rebellion. The next chapter is being written now. If this investigation has revealed the hidden architecture behind the world's oldest conspiracy, let me know by dropping the name Semyaza in the comments below. Like this video, share it with one person who needs to see this pattern, and subscribe. Because in our next investigation, we will take this blueprint of rebellion and apply it to the most mysterious verse in the book of Daniel. Verse that speaks of a sinister prince holding back a cosmic conflict, a figure that operates on the exact same principle of bound authority first demonstrated on the slopes of Mount Hermon.